creating great general managers is understanding how net profit's actually obtained.
Yes.
If you don't have the fundamental understanding that you can make a lot of gross, but if it goes right out the back door because our expense structure isn't built to create net profit, then you really don't have a fundamental understanding of the business behind the
100%.
business. Got to be a true leader. Got to understand the psychological makeup of employees. We're having a great awakening to the fact that this is over, and the reality of getting our business more nimble and getting our business more process-oriented and measuring the metrics of operation more closely, we're all getting back to that.
Welcome to the Matador Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Matador Buscast. Yes, I said Buscast. I've done podcasts in planes, trains, automobiles, boats, but never on a bus. Today, I have an amazing guest with me. I have the one, the only, the oh-so-famous Mr. Ed French. Ed, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good morning. This is a cool bus, by the way. For those of you who need to, you need to come see this bus. This is cool.
We like finding very unique places to do podcasts, and it's been interesting. It's kind of tight, but it's big. It's fun. Hey, Ed, I love kicking off our podcast with a little origin story. Because I'm always fascinated because I don't think anybody just wakes up one day and go, yeah, the automotive industry, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I'm curious, Ed, how did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Well, I wasn't predisposed to be in the car business, but as I grew up, my mother, who's 94, has told me over the years that as a little boy, 4 or 5 years old, I used to be able to name makes and models of cars as they were driving down the road, which drove my dad and her completely crazy. And my sister was just in complete avoidance. So as time went on, I was enamored with cars in general. Now, remember, I'm 69, so this was in the 50s and 60s. So
golden age of
cars. The golden age
Yes.
of cars, right. So I became enamored with cars, and actually my next-door neighbor was in the race car business. And so I began to, as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, used to go with him to the races, and the next thing you know, I've got a race car, and then I'm racing, and then it turned into, well, maybe I can, I need a job, so I ended up, my automotive career started in the fixed operations. I was actually a technician at a retail car store to support my racing habit. That's actually what it was for.
I've met a few techs that do that. Yeah.
And then as I was going to college and turned into a part-time job, and then I got married, and you know what happens to a race car when you get married, and then through a series of just really good lucky breaks, I was there. Jason, it's interesting. Life is one of those things where 2 or 3 people in your life can change it completely. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple of people in my life, one of them a general manager at a franchise store, saw me, believed in me, kind of took me under his wing, and said, if you ever want to go further than just being a technician, I've got a plan for you. And the next thing I know, I'm a service advisor, then I'm a parts manager, then I'm a parts and service director, and it just sort of progressed from there and ended up moving into the variable side of things, and then turning into where I was actually a sales manager, a finance manager. I've actually sat in every chair in a retail car store over time, and ended up with couple of stores, and then a partner in 5, and it's just turned into just being a fabulous career. I'm celebrating 50 years in the retail car business this year. So
that is absolutely amazing.
From a 10 or 11-year-old kid at the racetrack to 69 years old, and had a fabulous career in the retail car business. It's really been good to me. And at this stage in my life, the my plan is to give back.
That's so cool.
What can I do to put my arm around somebody and say, if I can help you? So that's essentially what my consulting business does.
That's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, what a lifelong career, you know.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jim Ziegler the other day, and I was
Right.
trying to think. There's only a handful of people I know that have that many years,
Right.
like yourself,
Yeah.
of experience in the business. And people ask me a lot. I'm like, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be Ed or Jim. That's what I want to be.
Right.
That is just really cool. The passion you have and the commitment you have
Yep.
for the industry. And I'm sure you feel very similar to the way I feel, that this industry has given me and my family
Right.
such just an amazing life.
Right.
Opportunities that I don't think I would have ever had.
Never.
If I'd ever gone into any other vertical.
Right.
And I'm with you. Giving back to the industry. I think we have an amazing industry. I still think there's a lot that can be done in our industry
Absolutely.
to continue to make it better. But it's in our blood. You can't
Yeah.
get it out.
Yeah, and it's my wife tells me, you should have quit 4 or 5 years ago, and I said, well, so I could stay home with you and drive you crazy. But it's to your point, I think that my role and others that are in this stage of your life is, what can I do to help prove that the industry is still solid and still has people that have dreams that we need to help them get fulfilled.
Yeah, one of the things, and we're going to get into our topics. We have some great topics, okay? But, one of the things I love about this industry is that we just have everybody from every walk of life.
Right.
We have everyone from every level of education
Right.
to every level of background,
Right.
From every different ethnic background.
Right.
It is just it is such a cool
Yep.
industry.
I believe that it's the most opportunistic business that you could possibly get into.
I agree.
It takes a lot of grit.
Yes.
Takes a lot of effort, and you have to really want to succeed. But if you have all those things, it's the best possible industry you could be in.
It is.
Yep.
And we got some great topics. You had an amazing workshop the other day. I heard people just saying very, very positive things at it. So and it seemed very actionable, which I love.
Right.
We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording today. Look, I love these conferences. I think they're amazing.
Right.
But as a dealer, when I put my dealer principal hat back on, I came here to learn. Give me something
Right.
actionable, something I can take back, something I can put in place to my operation. It's going to positively affect, either my bottom line or my profitability or my culture or my people or my process or technology.
Right.
And I find sometimes they get a little fluffy, but I heard yours was not.
Well, there's a lot of workshops that I've attended in the past where it was philosophical. It wasn't necessarily actionable.
Yeah.
And I told myself, if I ever got the opportunity to present at NADA, I would present a workshop that anyone who attended could take back a half a dozen action items, implement them in the store, and see an immediate reaction lift to the positive. And I got that opportunity this year. NADA actually reached out to me and asked me if I would do this workshop. I do a lot of 20 groups, and they had seen some of my 20 group presentations in education, and so they actually asked me, would you be willing to do more of an action item workshop? And it's interesting that we had a great turnout, and several people came up to me afterwards and said, listen, Ed, this was great. You gave us things that I can email back to my store while I'm still here and actually see a lift by the time I get back. So that was pretty heartwarming.
And let's go over some of the key takeaways because it sounded like there was just a ton of amazing content on there. And I know NAD will actually make this content available later on, so it's great. But what would you say if you had to pick three? What were maybe the top three takeaways during that workshop?
Well, the title of the workshop is General Managers as Change Agents and How to Make Your Store More Economic Resilient. And I guess I'll start with the top takeaway. General managers have to be situationally aware. And when I mean situationally aware, think of it like this, Jason. Think about your dealership as a plane, and the passengers are all of your employees. And the cargo is your inventory of both technician time, parts, and new and used cars.
Mm-hmm.
And every day that plane takes off. You know, all airports have a 3-letter acronym, right? You know, I live in Fort Myers. Our acronym is Regional Southwest.
Yep.
Every day that plane is taking off from gross profit needed. It's taken off from the airport called GPN.
Yep.
And it lands every day, every night at NPO. Net profit that actually occurred.
That actually occurred. Okay, now that's a new one. I've been in the business for a while, and our industry is very much so made up of 3-letter acronyms, and I call them 4-letter words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
good point.
you just taught me a couple new 3-letter acronyms that I am totally going to use. And thank you, Ed.
But situational awareness from general managers and how you become situationally aware is have a more disciplined work plan as a general manager. A lot of general managers that I meet are firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
They wake up, whatever happens, whatever's in front of them, that's what they do, and then they tackle the next fire and the next fire and the next fire. Well, if you don't have a disciplined daily work plan as a general manager, then and you don't have a daily or you don't have a weekly disciplined plan, then what ends up happening essentially is your store sort of runs at the level that you're willing to give it that day. In other words, it runs you, you don't run it.
Yes.
And so the second big takeaway was the checklists and the things that you need to stay on top of on a daily basis. Simple things like watch your store wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Get to your store before everybody else does, and look at how your store actually wakes up or comes to life. The second one is, MBWA. You've got to manage by wandering around. I told the audience yesterday, I said, if you ever want to know what...
Can I get that one more time?
MBWA.
MBWA.
Manage by wandering around.
Okay, guys.
Get out
this
of
is
your...
one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah.
I love 3-letter acronyms, and I'm learning so many right now. Okay.
I got a few more, but none of them are politically correct. But, a lot of dealers, a lot of general managers go to their office and read reports and data all day. And, data is a lovely thing. In the 70s and 80s, we didn't have a lot of data. Now we got so much data that it paralyzes you. And, I told the audience yesterday, I said, you got to manage by one around. If you want to know what's going on in your dealership, go to the detail department. They know everything. Those guys know the heartbeat of what's happening.
Yep.
But most general managers don't know their detailers. I also challenged the audience yesterday. I said, I just want you to imagine this, Jason. Think about your top 2 technicians in your store. Can we all agree that those guys are valuable?
Absolutely.
You betcha. Now I want you to this is a test for you. What's their kids' names? And where did they go on their last vacation? If you don't know that, then you're not a true general manager, because that means you're not interested in your people as people.
Well, and I see that definitely is the difference between let's call them managers and leaders.
Right.
Because I do believe people can manage.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
then I think the next level of what you're talking about is becoming a leader.
Right.
Now, I do think that some people, say, no, look, I walked to my dealership. I walked around. I said good morning to everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. But I think that's communication in the sense of just checking off the proverbial box.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is actual connection.
Yeah. What you're trying to do, what I encouraged the audience yesterday to do was let's get deeper into what makes up our people so that we can encourage them to do more.
Yes.
There we go. Productivity would be the third piece of the top 3 that you asked me to name. What is your productive to support ratio? How much gross does each employee make? What's your net per employee? What are your benchmarks? Are you running your store? Jason, we didn't have to run our stores against benchmark over the last 30 months. All you needed was the key to the front door. That's all you needed.
And a finger to flip the light switch
That's
on.
it.
That was it.
Yeah. And, I think that what we've learned quickly is that we're coming back to earth.
Yes.
And as we come back to earth, we've got to get ourselves back into the basics. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that I hear at this convention this year is I got to get back to basics. I got to get my salespeople doing the process. I got to get my F&I managers doing a better job. I got to get my service advisors back to reality.
I got to be honest with you. I actually, it makes me a little fearful when I hear that. I cringe a little bit when I hear that, right? Because my first thought is, which basics are you talking about?
Right, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
because, like, basics, early 2000s? Or basics where, because look, bottom line, fundamentally, the consumers changed.
Right.
The industry's changed. They have gotten accustomed to Amazon packages showing up at their front door and whenever they want.
Right.
All right. They've got accustomed to not having a selling process.
Right.
All right. They've got accustomed to having buying choices.
Right.
And I don't think you can take that away from them.
The basics in my mind is what is the employee engagement with the consumer and what's the experience that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And the basics are also, are we just busy or are we creating
I like that.
profitability?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of busy work that happened over the last couple of years, but it created profit. The unfortunate thing is that same busy work isn't going to create the same amount of profit going forward.
No, and honestly, I know this might sound bad. I'm actually totally comfortable with it.
Yeah, I'm happier about it, frankly.
Because I think, and I remember this, remember back in 2008, we had this happen too, right?
Right.
Where we kind of had that, I would call it maybe like an operational reset.
We sure did. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we sure
where
did.
we saw it was a reset. That's what it was. All right.
Yep.
You saw who were the true operators and who were the ones that really just relied on their brand and the brand name, and that's how they kind of got by.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to be as fast or quick or swift as what we saw back in 2008.
Right.
But it's going to happen. The bits and
Right.
pieces. I mean, I'm looking at some of the people's inventories, and I'm seeing what they have invested in some of these inventories, these used inventories sitting on a lot. And I'm going to say, you're going to be tested pretty quick if you're a real operator or not.
Yeah, I've actually lived through 3 of those. So that just tells you how long I've been around. But
that's why I love having you on the podcast.
The 70, the era of 79 to 82 when prime interest rate was 21%. And there were dealers falling by the wayside every day. Just think about that. Prime interest was 21.
Can everyone out there watching, listening, just take a moment?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the average new hire right now has less than a year of the business.
Yeah.
Okay, so just real quick, interest rates were
21%. That was prime rate. Yeah, I remember, Jason, when and I happened to be general manager of a Pontiac store in 1981. And I remember the day, never forget it, when GMAC, you guys won't remember that either, GMAC actually introduced 14.99% on the Pontiac Phoenix.
hot dog.
And the showroom was abuzz with people clamoring to get a Pontiac Phoenix for 14.99% interest rates. So that was the first one I lived through, and then obviously to your point earlier, the 08-09 economic recession that we had, which took, in one day it swept 783 Chrysler dealers right off the face of the earth.
The GM dealership I was working at the time was included into that big list of stuff.
Yep. Lost all the Pontiac stores.
Yep.
Lost all the Saturn stores. Mm-hmm. And what it did was it woke the industry up to a couple of facts. One, we were over-dealered, and two, that at any moment, your business can literally change in a heartbeat, and you'd better be nimble enough to be able to pivot. And that's one thing I will say about dealers. They're pretty resilient.
Yes.
But over this last 30 months of where we've enjoyed records that we'll probably never, ever get back to.
100%. Enjoy it. Had fun.
Yeah,
it was great, wasn't it?
Hope awesome. You didn't spend all of it.
Yes.
But
hope you reinvested some of it in your people.
What I would submit to you, Jason, is this. We became less nimble during that period of time.
Yes.
And so when I say back to basics, what I'm really saying is we're having a great awakening to the fact that this is over, and the reality of getting our business more nimble and getting our business more process oriented and measuring the metrics of operation more closely, we're all getting back to that.
Well,
and that's what I just worked with the audience yesterday in my workshop.
And going through kind of the key statement, even in the title of your workshop, is general manager and agent of change.
Right.
You know, I've had the opportunity to interview some amazing operators. I mean, some truly amazing operators.
Right.
And I've had the opportunity to consult for hundreds of dealerships across the country.
Right.
And I got to admit, I definitely met some general managers that I don't know if they can necessarily read a P&L back to me. I mean, no, some are great.
Some are
don't
great.
get me wrong.
Yep.
But then some of them are just like, you do know, wait, your absorption, how, you can't, right? Wait a minute, you don't?
Yeah. Well, you know, Jason, a lot of them were battlefield promoted. You know,
Yes,
we
there
fired
go.
Jim,
I like that.
you're up.
Yes.
And, you know, they might have been a great finance manager. They might have been a great sales manager. Even some of them have come from fixed backgrounds.
Yes.
But that doesn't make them a general manager. Even though there are some general manager, quote, schools, generally they learn by doing the job. And the unfortunate thing is that if you're not given that foundation, and one of the things that I do in my consulting business is I work with general managers. I have what's called a general manager's boot camp, where we actually put them through the very basics of how profit is actually made, what are the things that you need to be looking at, what are the principles of dissecting a financial statement. There's the numbers behind the numbers, or what I call the business behind the business.
Yes.
So, you know, I think that what you've just mentioned with folks that may not know is not to their fault.
I actually think it's the owner's issue.
Exactly.
And I hate to say it. Look, because there's amazing owners out there, and I love them so much. But there are some owners that I think even intentionally keep some levels of
some of
this
that.
in the dark.
Yep. There's a lot of mushrooms going on out there. Yeah.
And you have like this whole podcast is just like one-liners. This
yeah.
is like the best
I maybe I'll end up with a second career.
This is
right?
awesome.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Okay, well, let's talk about what it takes, because I think that there's a fair amount of audience out there. We have a lot of sales managers, we have a lot of finance managers, a lot of service managers that listen to the podcast. All right, and that is one of their career goals.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would love to hear from someone with your kind of experience and background. All right, what does it take to be a real general manager these days?
Got to be a true leader. Got to understand the psychological makeup of employees. And you really have to, and I just mentioned it, you have to understand the business behind the business. It's more than just gross. It's a balance of how gross is made, how it fits into an expense structure, and how net profit is actually obtained. And when I say we're landing at NPO, that net profit that's the measuring stick. And I think a lot of sales managers, because their comp plans, Jason, are focused on gross, not net.
I think that's a shame, don't you?
I do. I actually encourage dealers to really look at departmental net at becoming the measuring stick for a great manager.
100%.
Because it's a business then, as opposed to just sales management.
Absolutely. I met a dealer the other day, and I think you'd really appreciate this pay plan, or this model that they built, and I thought was great, is they actually kind of took it even one step farther. And they actually maintain separate P&Ls for each department.
Right.
And the department needs to be profitable on its own.
Right.
The administrative part is kind of from a percentage perspective and a square footage perspective equally shared among them, right? Because if you just had your administration, well, they don't produce anything. There'd just be a couple $100,000 of just nothing, right? But so like the F&I department had its own P&L.
Right.
The parts department had its own P&L. Service department, the sales department, the used car department, and each of those department managers were paid on the net. Right. And I just thought, like,
that's the next step of creating great general managers, is understanding how net profit's actually obtained.
Yes.
If you don't have the fundamental understanding that you can make a lot of gross, but if it goes right out the back door because our expense structure isn't built to create net profit, then you really don't have a fundamental understanding of the business behind the
100%.
business.
And it's super easy to come to a show like this when you're not responsible for those expenses and the net profit of it, to go, yeah, I'll take that widget. I'll take that one. And okay, give me 2 of those, please.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, look, Ed, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation, our time today. This has been such a great conversation. And
thanks for having me.
I'm sure there'll be many more conversations to come. But before I let you go, for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now who would love to connect with you and learn a bit more about you and can maybe follow along with your journey, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, I have a website. It's edfrenchauto.com. And the name of my company is Auto Profit. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me easy through Auto Profit. And that's probably, you can email me, autoprofitllc@gmail.com.
Awesome. Ed, thanks, man, so much.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Matador Podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Be sure to check out the full podcast library at matador.ai to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.